us the honor of the invocation, please.
Stand. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, creator of all things, we come to you this afternoon, Lord, and just thank you for this time you've allowed us to come together, Lord, and talk about the Cherokee people's business, Lord. We just thank you for all the many blessings you give each and every one of us. Thank you for the opportunity to represent our people, Lord. Just pray that you'll watch over us, guide and direct us. Be with our soldiers, be with our young people, Lord, and help them to find their way to be good, productive citizens, Lord. Just thank you for this time again, and help us to have good discussions here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Roll call.
Meredith Fraley. Here. Bill England. Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates. Here. Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghawk. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Don Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
China Glory Jordan. Here. Curtis Snell. Chris Soap.
Here.
David Thornton.
Present.
Kara Cowan Watts. We do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. So the next order of business is approval of the September 30 regular session minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes stand approved as written. Okay, next item are reports. Ms. Wright, Marshal Service. Hello.
There you. Danny Tanner standing in for Sherry. I believe you all have a report.
Yes, we do.
Any questions on it or anything we need to discuss?
Any questions or comments? I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Danny Tanner.
Danny. Questions or comments? Anything you want to say, Danny?
No, everything's going good right now, so we're doing
Okay, great.
good.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond, Office of Attorney General. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
For being here.
Thank you. We submitted our report. Just a couple of things in addition to that. I just got back from the Governor's Water Conference the past 2 days. I was heartened to hear a number of speakers, including both gubernatorial candidates, United States Congressman, a retiring member of the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, and then a number of other speakers talk about the absolute necessity for the state of Oklahoma to negotiate with the tribes on water rights. That the tribes had been ignored too long, hadn't been included in the process. Litigation's not beneficial to anyone. So at least people are saying the right things, and I think that's probably something that's happened in the last couple of years. So I was very heartened to hear it. The other thing, and I just gave Mr. Embry a zip drive with the documents on it, there continues to be a little bit of movement from the United Kituwa Band on taking land into trust. We notified you of Mr. Echo Hawk's decision about how they could, but they were not a successor in interest. They've asked for reconsideration of that or clarification of it. We found out about that by accident. They didn't notify us. Arthur Lazarus of Sonosky Chambers found out about it and has drafted a response for us. So Mr. Hembry has all those. In fact, I got Mr. Lazarus's response today before I came over. So I think that's the latest that's going on with us. I'd be happy to answer any questions or attempt to.
Mr. Hopkins?
Thank you, Ministry. I had asked last month about the UKB issue and about the Department of Interior's position on Cherokee Nation Constitution. And on the UKB issue, and I appreciate you sending me some information on that, and just to make sure that I understand it correctly, the UKB relies on some language in an appropriation bill which suggested that they only needed our consent. Was that right? Or not our consent, but they just needed our consultation. But that the underlying statute, which we believe has not been changed, requires our consent, and that's
correct.
In a nutshell our position.
That is our position. That's never been adjudicated, but we've asserted it. And I think it's pretty good argument, because that was changed in the heart of a budget rider, that consult language rather than consent. That's correct.
And then on the, if I could, Mr. Speaker, and then on the Department of Interior, I've been concerned about the briefs that I read from the U.S. Department of the Interior asserting that they, in not so many words, hadn't recognized the 99 Constitution, calling that into question. I think there was some discussion in our legislative executive conference, but could you sort of summarize why they're wrong? I know it's a big issue, but I just, it gives me anxiety to see that the agency that has jurisdiction over our tribe to make those kind of statements in a court pleading.
You know, it is disquieting. I think that the statements made in those briefs, and of course that's the Friedman case, were very much self-serving on the behalf of the United States. What they're trying to do is escape any responsibility for the 2003 amendment by saying, well, we hadn't recognized the latest Constitution. Of course, they later recognized our amendment taking them out of the process, but then they said that wasn't retroactive, that was prospective only. In addition to that, I think the biggest argument is that regardless of what they say, they have been operating with us on a government-to-government basis. And Vicki Hanby and some of the other folks have pulled a number of our agreements that we've entered into in the last 6 or 7 years with them, with health, with DOI, with Health and Human Services. What I'm looking for in those, and I'm still looking, is a specific recitation of our latest Constitution, because, you know, in the beginnings of lots of those government agreements that we cite who the government is and who's negotiating the contract, and I'm looking for that specific language. Clearly they interact with the current elected officials of the nation, the current appointed officials, including positions that didn't exist under the previous Constitution. So regardless of what they say, in fact, they have recognized us.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I get concerned thinking about if we had a Bureau of Indian Affairs that was more hostile to the Cherokee Nation, or a Congress that was more hostile to the Cherokee Nation. Wouldn't they seize on this legal pleading and say, look, if this is what the government is telling a federal court, forget the circumstantial evidence that they have done business with Cherokee Nation, signed agreements, and interact with elected officials. That's what worries me. And it leads me to this question. Will the resolution of the Friedman case resolve that issue necessarily, or isn't it possible that we get some resolution to the Friedman case, but this pleading's out there? They've made this statement and they've not taken it back because they didn't have occasion to take it back.
You know, even regardless of how the federal Friedman case resolves, there is still at least that contingent in the Bureau of Indian Affairs that may very well state that and assert that position. So you are correct in that may not resolve it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Lori Jordan and then Ms. Fishinghoff.
Could you give us a little more information in your report than maybe these one-liners?
The DOJ grant, that is actually where to start. Sherry Chenault is our newest employee. She came to us from the state of Oklahoma as a victim witness coordinator. As you all know, part of what we do is act as a very tiny DA's office prosecuting crimes that occur on our Indian country committed by Indians. Of course, anytime you have criminal activity, you have victims. One of the biggest issues facing Indian country across the nation is domestic violence. Sherry, after she came to us, hit the ground running and applied for a number of grants, including this DOJ grant. We received notification that we are going to be recipients of it. We're working in conjunction with the Marshal Service, and its primary focus is on domestic violence, education, prevention, that sort of thing. I can get you the specifics on it, but standing here today, that's about as specific as I can get. We haven't got it yet. We received that initial notification.
Actually, I read a little blurb on it in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, what I was interested in were you were going to set up a center for the batterers, and that's what I wanted to know about.
Okay. I'll be happy to do that. You know, that's one of the areas where I think that there's an unaddressed need. Of course, Helping Prices does great work locally, but unfortunately, there's more need than there are services.
Well, help in crisis is one side, and it sounded like you were going to address the other side, the other issues pertaining to breaking that cycle. And of course, we probably all, I say we all, the ones of us that are lawyers probably learned in law school that that's a cycle, that if you don't break, it just continues generation after generation. In fact, the first case where I represented someone as a young attorney was a young man that had broke his kid's arm, and his arms had been broke when he was a kid. And they actually don't realize what they're doing wrong because no one's ever taught them
That's
that
absolutely
there's
right.
a different way of being raised, a more safe way of being raised. And so that interested me that you were going from the other avenue, which very seldom we see. And specifically, I would like to know, is it a closed center just for our use, or is it going to be open and available for other referrals, and how are we going to handle those, and are we going to try to set up a fee schedule if we move to open where it can be referred by the state courts, it can be referred by other tribal courts, maybe Creek Nation, if we have some creeks over here that need some re-education in that area. It really intrigued me what little I read in the newspaper, and I wanted to know a lot more about it, and I thought you'd have a whole slew of things that you would tell us about amounts and how it was going to work. So if you could get some more information, I would be real interested in seeing what that was all about.
I will.
And that was really I see where they went to conferences. Maybe next time they could tell us a little bit about what they got out of the conferences and whether they were speakers or whether they were simply attendees or whether this was a requirement for a grant. If you could give us some additional information, I'd certainly appreciate it.
We'll do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Fisher-Hawk?
Diane, would you do me a favor and please go over the principal chief versus Gina Olay on the C&E and the entities purchasing goods and services?
I'll tell you what I know about it. I wasn't involved in it. We issued an opinion out of my office at the beginning of last year, I believe. Chrissy Nemo was the primary author, and we were construing that constitutional provision that prohibits all of us from receiving anything from the nation and its entities, basically other than our paycheck. The application of that has become an issue, as you all know, as the nation's continued to grow, as the number of our employees have continued to grow, in ways I'm sure that the drafters of the Constitution, I was one of the ones in the last one, never imagined. This latest issue that came about dealt with the art market and whether or not C&E could purchase art from Cherokee Nation employees or Cherokee Nation business employees. Of course, we have a number of artists that work for us. I have 3 in my little bitty department that I can think of. We believe that under the interpretation that we've given in that opinion, that you can't do that it's conflict for the employee. Of course, that's problematic. Mr. Huffman called me, a number of people called me. And really, there was nothing for us to do, so the chief took it upon himself to file a lawsuit, named Gina Olaya as a representative from Cherokee Nation businesses, that effectively stayed the application of our opinion until further order of the court, and by agreement, Judge Cripps signed it. So, that's what I know about it.
Okay. I'll just tell you what I heard, and I'm curious about it. I know for a fact, because we was given books, that the chief has written a book or co-authored or something with a couple other more people, because it was handed out here by the Secretary of State. And I know that, or I take it that maybe Cherokee Nation, his entities, the gift shops, I'm not sure, has bought some of this book to sell. And I'm wondering how that stands on it, because I know in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe Wilma Nankeller had written several books, and I'm not quite sure I thought Wilma took the issue with it, and other chiefs did back during their time, that they would not sell it in the gift shop or anything, to avoid any controversy or any looks of something being done wrong, perhaps, being improper.
I don't have any idea. I don't have any idea if the chief receives any money from that at all. I do know, or I suspect it is for sale. I think of Chief Mankillers, I think she wrote hers after she left office, but I don't know. But I'll find out.
Would you please find out and
Sure.
write it, see if he does receive any money for it, because I don't like the appearance of anything not being done right.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from Ms. Hammonds? Yes, Dr. Todd?
You can get back to me if you want to personally on this or in committee. Are you familiar with a group operates in Washington County called Looking Glass that deals with DHS cases?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of.
Okay. I've had some complaints from constituents and non-Indians that there is the possibility or the inference that this group is telling DHS that the Cherokee Nation wants certain cases to go certain ways dealing with children. And I don't know, as I try to stay out of all that legal, which I should, I am just alerting you to the fact that there are some people that are concerned that DHS is taking it at face value that this group has the ear of the Cherokee Nation, and basically what they're telling DHS is what we want. And if that is not the case, I would just like, and I've had this conversation with Jerry Snell, you may touch base with him, but I would just be interested to see, and obviously there's parts of that I'm not privy to, nor do I need to be, but I just wanted to alert you to the fact that there is a concern that they're passing on what they believe is our wishes, and that may or may not be true.
Okay. I certainly will look into it. I know that they're involved in an adoption case in Washington County. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anything further? Anyone? Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Anyone here from the Election Commission? Seeing them, we do have the report, it's in the book. Sharon Swepson, Tax Commission. Afternoon, Swepson.
Afternoon, how are you? I believe you have my report in your packets, and I would try to address any questions that you might have.
Questions for Ms. Swepton? And Dr. Todd?
I just wanted to pass along, I have had so many positive comments out of the two gals that work the Collins office.
Thank you.
How friendly they are, and
I appreciate that.
so you might pass that along.
I will pass that along. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lori Jordan?
Sharon, I went to the tag office, so it's been maybe 3 weeks ago to get my tag removed. And it was probably about 11:30 when I got in there, and it was probably almost 1 when I got out of there. And of course, a lot of people come in during their
Lunch hour.
Anywhere from 11 to it appears to be
2 o'clock.
Okay, but you only had one person walking.
I've been short-staffed, and we've got 2 new people hired, so we're training because we were short. I was down to 2 people on the front counter in Tahlequah, so that was part of it.
And to commend that young lady, this girl was turning them out just every couple of seconds, and I wish I could remember her name today. I had it wrote down because I was going to commend her for her knowledge and the job that she was doing, but those 2 vacant seats was killing her.
It's killing everybody, but we've got the 2 hired, and we're training them now, so hopefully we're going to fix all of that.
You sure need to keep the one that sits facing as they come in, the young
I know exactly who you're
lady,
talking about, yes.
because that girl is a jewel.
She is.
She
And she's
handled
been
it
with us for a while.
professionally. She didn't get upset. She was thanking everybody for coming in, and she was probably doing one a minute, I think. But I felt so bad for her because there appeared to be other folks in the office, but no one was occupying the chairs to work the desk. It kind of made me wonder if we should dual train several people there to cover
We do. And part of that is that we had the new people, and so those people that you're seeing back there rotating around probably hadn't been trained enough yet to put out on the front counter.
And I actually was gonna call you, and then I thought, oh, well, I'd catch you somewhere, but that little girl was doing, young woman, it wasn't a girl, it was a young woman. She was doing an excellent job. She's needed 2 more of her.
She does. And we appreciate her hard work. She's a good worker, and I appreciate that. But we do have 2 new staff hired. We're training them right now, so hopefully we're going to get all that settled out. It seems like when we have turnover, everybody decides to go. So.
And if there was any way you could make the waiting area a little bigger, that'd be great.
We're hoping one of these years we're going to have a new building, and that will all be fixed.
You're going to have to either make the waiting area bigger, or you're going to have to do like Chili's does and give them a little deal
Give them a little buzzer.
when it's their turn, because they were all standing outside, so they didn't know when their time was to come in.
We'll try to work on that.
Thank you.
Any other compliments from Mrs. Weston? Did you have any more comments? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Self-governance?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, members of council. I'm Vicki today. Vicki sent me an email this morning, and she's going to be out of the office, sick, battling a flu bug or something. And I'm also responsible for her report not being in your catalog. To be honest, she gave me about a 20-page report, and I advised her, can you cut that down to about 2 or 3 pages, because I don't know that the council needs to know all the detail about APRA reporting and our Recovery Act reporting, as well as everything else. The activities going on in self-governance are always ongoing. We are about to wrap up signing off on the AFAs, the funding agreements with the Department of Interior and IHS. The Recovery Act reporting continues to be a big challenge for the nation because of the special oversight of all those grant funds that we received, which are in the millions and millions of dollars. And that'd be my real quick summary of all of Vicki's activities, and I apologize for not being Vicki. Any questions?
Questions or comments from Mr. Ragsdale?
I would say one thing about the recognition issue that was brought up by Councilman Hoskins. The Department of Interior is required on an annual basis to list and enumerate every federally recognized tribe in the country, and that has been done consistently for the last 2 decades, and it would take an extraordinary action for the Secretary of Interior not to be able to publish those the names of the tribes that have an ongoing federal Indian relationship.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mr. Eggsy. I guess the concern isn't so much revoking recognition as it is saying we recognize you, but your Constitution is not approved, and maybe those two are inconsistent ideas, but it would just concern me that the Department of Interior would say that in a pleading and then carry it to the next step, whatever that next step would be.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate concern. It would actually be 2 different actions. They cannot de-recognize the Cherokee Nation since we have existed since early days of the treaty-making period. Whether or not the Department of Interior ever got grounds, or anyone else as far as that goes, to not recognize the governing leadership would be another issue. But the Department of Interior did approve the recent amendments to our Constitution when the people of the tribe took the referendum to remove the Secretary of Interior and/or the United States President from the approval process, and that was approved by the Assistant Secretary, who has the delegation of authority. So our current government is recognized by official acts of the Department of Interior. It's just not, they didn't actually approve it because they approved people's removal of the Secretary of Interior from the approval of the Constitution. So that's why we don't have a signed approval letter on our most recent amendments to the Constitution, because the people took that out of the Secretary's hands and the Secretary recognized it.
And this is on the Department of Interior, but it would be good if they would recognize what you've said in the context of this Friedman case and not take what is a pretty extraordinary measure, and that is to call into question the Constitution, because they could probably beat that case without making that argument, but they chose to make it. That's what's troubling. But I do appreciate the points that you're making, and I agree with those. But it just, boy, if their legal department would get on the same page, because it sounds like
I would agree with that.
They're trying to swing for the fences, and I don't know if they.
For the record, they did not consult with me when I was director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs about that decision.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rackfield.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rackfield. And we have, is anyone here from the Gaming Commission? We do have the report. It's in the book. Okay, moving on down to Mr. Hembry, codification.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I met with Mr. Nathan Morton with the AG's office yesterday. We have given, and he is assigning each title that we've completed to a proofreader who hasn't had anything to do with it. So, obviously, as you may know, when you work on a document again and again, your eyes may skip over obvious errors. And so we're having sort of an independent set of eyes look at each title. We are still awaiting the bid from West and Lexus. I will believe that I'd be shocked if West was so out of line that we wouldn't want to use them. But at any rate, we're going through the final proofreading, and we're almost there.
Questions, comments from Mr. Hembry?
I just want to say thank you.
We're getting there.
Mr. Baker.
And as soon as we finish this, when are we going to start on the next one?
I'd suggest right away. As you know, codification is a never-ending process. But I would suggest that the council start in haste about keeping a good pocket park system going.
Thank you, Ms. Ray?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to follow up to Ms. Fishinghock's question about the art book that the principal chief was involved in. He does not receive any monies for the art book.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on down to...
Who does receive the money?
Pardon? I'm sorry, did you...
Who does receive the money?
Ms. Ragfield?
That I don't know. I just asked if he received any. There were 3 authors of the book. Do you have that information?
In the law.
I thought you were coming up with an answer.
Do you have the cash?
I actually am.
Oh, good.
So, pardon the interruption, but during our employee meetings, we've been going around to the different communities and speaking with the employees, and some of the employees had actually asked that question, and Chief Smith indicated during the employee meetings that he does not receive money for that. C&E actually produced the book, and they are the ones receiving the funds. It was just they did it to get the book out, and C&E produced the books, and then they received the revenues from the book.
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enlow. I'm moving down to old business. But before we get started, because our agenda has some rather complex issues, I as chair I'm going to limit discussion to 3 minutes. It doesn't mean that you have to talk for 3 minutes. You can't talk more than once, but you have to stay within that 3-minute range. Ms. Fishinghoff?
Meredith, I'm going to go ahead and table ours right now because I knew it was going to be a long meeting, just like you said, and important. So I'm going to go ahead when it comes time to make a motion to table.
Okay, wait till we get to it. I appreciate that. Item 1 is an act prohibiting elected officials from appearing or participating in media advertisements. Mr. Hoskin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker proposed this some months ago. It seems like it's been forever, but and tabled it out of I think respect to the administration to weigh in on it. Administration has weighed in on it. I know Councilor Garvin put a lot of effort into crafting some amendments a couple of months ago. I still think it's an important issue. I still think that we shouldn't spend public dollars on advertisements in that insulated period of an election year, which was the purpose of this act. I do have, I don't know if it's confidence or just optimism that the administration will, on its own, refrain from those advertisements, and I think our business entities could do that as well during that its later period. I mean, it's for our voters and it's for the people. I don't think the time is right for this. I'm not convinced it could pass in the current draft that it's in. So with that, Madam Speaker, I withdraw it from the agenda.
Item 1, the media advertisements is withdrawn. Okay, item 2 is a resolution proposing an amendment to Article 9 of the Cherokee Nation Constitution. And Ms. Fishing, we have a motion to table and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Yes is you favor to table. Yes is for tabling.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
China Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Chris So,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton, Kara Callan Watts. No. Bill Anglin,
No.
Bill John Baker,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
No.
Harley Buzzard,
No.
Julia Coates,
No.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Don Garvin.
No.
We have 7 yes and 10 no.
7 yes and 10 no. Motion to table fails. So, Ms. Fishinghawk, you want to?
Okay, I just make a motion to withdraw then.
Madam Speaker, point of order, that doesn't take a motion. Has been my understanding of our practice. The sponsor can just withdraw it on her own initiative.
Okay, I just withdraw it then.
Pardon me?
I just withdraw it, that way I don't have to vote on it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Item 2 is withdrawn. Okay, item 3 is an act relating to creation of jobs growth for discussion only. Mr. Hopkins?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I think we can have a brief discussion here. This is discussion only, and from the outset, let me note that I think the appropriate act that I wanted to discuss isn't actually the Jobs Growth Act. It's somewhat related. It has to do with the dividends. So with your blessing, Madam Speaker, even though the Jobs Growth Act isn't the act that's at issue, could we have a discussion under this agenda item on dividends?
Absolutely. I think Mr. Evans is prepared for that.
And Madam Speaker, just briefly, the issue is whether we are doing all we can to capture the dividend. That's not to say should we increase it, that's a debate for another day, but at the 30% we're at, are we capturing all of the dividend we can? Either does the statute need to be changed, or does the statute okay and we need to look at how we're actually executing that statute? So with that, I turn it over to Mr. Evans.
Mr. Evans,
Thank you, Madam
you
Chair.
have 3 minutes.
Okay. This arose from a comment I believe that I made, Mr. Hoskin grabbed hold of during the budget hearings. And for real quick historical perspective, in 2005 there were 2 pieces of legislative acts that were passed, 36 and 3705 acts. 3605 in essence set the dividend at 30%. There's an act floating around, I think 3605 is going around to you around the table, and it states those corporations in which the Cherokee Nation is the sole or majority shareholder and that are incorporated under Cherokee Nation law shall issue a monthly cash dividend of 30% of net income. In addition, the board of directors of such corporations will have the discretion to declare any special quarterly dividend that they deem appropriate. That act was followed with 3700 Act, properly known as the Job Growth Act. The Job Growth Act actually enabled the 3605 Dividend Act to a certain degree, and its applicability as the one that is in your book, by the way, as it in Section 5, substantive provision under subsection A, job growth. It did 2 things. It assigned the ownership, which is addressed in the former Act 3605 as far as the sole or majority owner. It says that the principal chief or designee shall be authorized to execute the necessary documents to transfer ownership of CNE, CNI, CND, and any subsidiaries of the listed entities to CMB. He went on to add that CMB's purpose was to basically facilitate and promote economic development through planning and self-sufficiency, also enhance profits and cash flow, allocate capital, and provide necessary debt, subject to council approval, or equity capital to pursue such business ventures and opportunities and meet the long-term capital requirements. Now, I say all that to say that in the past, in 2009, the dividend was calculated at 30% of CNE. Now, 2009 obviously was subsequent to the 2005 adoption of both these statutes. 2009, CNE's net income was greater than CNB's consolidated net income. Had the dividend have been calculated on CNB, it would have been lower in that year. However, that one provision of the Act just passed the last sentence, the Board of Directors will have the discretion to declare any special quarterly dividend. So one could conclude or assume that that extra dividend that was paid in 2009 followed the special dividend clause. 2010 is a different story. 2010, CNB now, as a consolidated entity, has a greater net income than CNE as a standalone. They're not completely finished paying dividends on 2010. Therefore, after discussing with the CEO of CNB, the treasurer of the executive branch, it is my understanding from those two individuals that the practice for applicable law and to follow these statutes will be shifted now over to the CNB consolidated level for dividend payment. So I don't advise that there will be any changes to existing unless the intent behind these legislative acts have changed since this body adopted them. Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins?
I don't have anything. I just wanted to make sure in a nutshell that we're capturing all the dividend we can, and it sounds like in the past their business entities have actually tried to make sure that we get the greater of the two calculations when it could, and I think that's commendable, and I just wanted to get some clarification on what the law says and what we should be doing with it. So
I think it's very important that the entire body, as well as the government as a whole, understand where the future is going with the calculation of the dividend and where is the level it is applied. Because technically, there is only one sole or majority shareholder company now. It's CNB. So in another comment toward that, in the future calculated at the CNB level, it does in fact follow the statute, in my mind, to what it's calling for.
thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Mr. Stewart, did you have a comment?
No, I think...
You have 2 minutes, by the way, to make a comment.
He stuttered so long, it's too late.
Take me a minute to walk up and a minute to walk back, so I got a minute. No, I think Doug summarizes that very accurately. The reason, I think, the greater of the two, but with the volatility in the economy and the net income of all the companies, and we're diversifying, that now we have enough confidence to go to the higher number and go ahead and pay, and that will be consistently forward. So, not a problem from our standpoint.
Ms. Fishing-Hawk?
I got a question. Are we getting any dividends from any of the companies under CNB?
Yes, all of the net income of the subsidiaries, say if we own 51%, then 51% rolls up to C&B. So any of our net income is reported at the C&B financial statement level. And that will be the basis, now that it's greater than C&E, for the dividend.
Okay. At some point in time, could you give us a breakdown about the total dividend paid, which comes from which business?
Well, what happens is it's 30% of the net income of each of those numbers. So in the financial statement, if you look at all the different companies, they just roll up, and then there are some expenses at the C&B level that are not passed through, and so those offset that. And then that net number will be 30% of that number will be paid.
Okay. Is there companies that are not paying 30%?
No, there will not be companies that will not be paying effectively a dividend unless they're in a loss situation, and then that loss flows up. So you kind of have to view them individually, then add them all up and take that number. So there's a two-step.
That's what I was wondering.
So they are effectively paying the dividend.
Okay. Could you tell me if our company that down at the Gulf, our environmental company?
Yes.
It is paying dividends.
It is paying dividends to the extent that we own the percentage of the company. And then that, okay. Yes. So the answer is yes.
David, thank you. Your time's up.
All right.
Oh, I had a question.
Well, you'll have 3 minutes to ask him questions. Jody had 3 minutes, so Ms. Count Watts, you're next. 3 minutes.
You're talking about 3 minutes for the whole committee?
3 minutes per person.
Okay. Beyond, I think it would be useful to what Councilwoman Fishing Hawk said, but maybe like in the financials, if it was indicated what each entity as was going was fully calculating towards contributing as a dividend, that would be helpful in their financials, even though that's not traditionally part of a financials. I think if we could isolate it out and put it in the summary, that would be helpful.
We can do that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Gloria Jordan?
David, one of the reasons that I asked for itemized budgets of each of those entities was so I could decipher for myself that was what was going on.
Right.
But when I got my answer, basically I got about 2 or 3 lines per budget that said this is the money we expect to come in, this is the money we expect to go out. I want everything in between.
Right, we're working on that.
I plan to spend that money.
Yeah, Don LaBasse is directed to do that, and he will go through the right process to get you that information. In fact, I had a note right here to tell you that,
Okay,
so we're on it.
you are still working on it, and you're going to get it to me pretty soon?
Yes, ma'am. We have it, it's just a matter of putting it in a format that we can deliver it and then get it to you.
And it will be itemized, so I see what we're projecting we're going to spend and where it's going to go. And
Absolutely.
what we're projecting we're going to make, and it's going to be per
entity.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because, I really wanted this back during the budget process. Well, that's come and gone. And now we need to get it done.
Yeah, what we have is individual companies that have gone through this process, so there's each company, and so we're going around to accumulate all that, and then we'll deliver it to you through the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Jordan?
Hello, Dave.
Hello.
What's going on, man?
Good work.
Listen, one thing that I wanted to ask you about these dividends, has this body ever asked the board, CMB board, for an additional dividend on a quarterly basis in the last 5 years? I can remember back maybe 8, 9 years ago that they give us additional.
I think there was one occurrence when that happened, but I'm not sure what year it was.
But we never have asked,
No. No. I think the intent when this special dividend clause came about with the Jobs Growth Act was that the tribe was used to that higher dividend from C&E, and then when the other expenses offset it, then that would be a debt, So the decision was made to maintain the higher of either C&E's net income as the basis or consolidated net income. So that, I think that's where that decision is
But
made.
that doesn't stop this body from asking for additional dividend, does it?
No, I mean, this body could,
The law?
I'm not interpreting the law, but I would assume you can do whatever you want to do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Hoskin, what's your pleasure on this? You wanted...
I think we've exhausted the discussion, so no need to table.
Okay. Item 4 is Tribal Council Travel Expense Policy. I brought this forward because Ms. Gloria Jordan, one issue that was brought up was that any funds that are not spent from our travel go back to the council person's district for community service. And is everyone clear on that? Yes, Mr. Hart.
My only question was, those are carryover funds from fiscal year 2010. Does that mean those funds are presently available?
I'm assuming that's so. Judd, can you answer that question?
What was that? One more time?
The question I raised with you yesterday about the availability of the carryover travel funds for community assistance. Could you kind of recap what you explained to me?
Gail is literally within hours of confirming with the accounting department that we have all travel expense statements closed and all trips closed for last year. There's a couple she's still going back and forth with them. Probably by the finance committee, we can get those squared away. But there's just a few. And you should have received a spreadsheet from Gail that broke out the elective from the official travel for everyone's review to ensure that the classification of the type of trip it was accurate.
Did everyone get a copy? I believe I did.
I think we got the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Roskin?
And just to follow up, would we do this as we historically did community assistance? We would, as a committee, identify those projects, they would be approved, and it would be check would be cut, so to speak. Is that, I think that was the intent of it.
Yeah, we have a policy here of how that is done.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
I would just like to point out that normally this would be part of our carryover that comes forward after the audit, and I would really not want to get into the practice of looking at individual line items this early, where we haven't even closed the year yet, and bringing forward carryover bits and pieces at a time. I understand the council can do that, but I would really not like to get into that habit of analyzing every single line item to squeeze out a little bit of carryover to bring forward early.
You know when that might be possible that...
I should have a good carryover number for the March E&F committee meeting.
Okay. Ms. Count Watts?
I'm okay. I'm satisfied that you asked my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Huffman?
I know I'm pressing my time here, but did I hear right that March will be the first time that the administration will be comfortable with us using the carryovers for community assistance?
March is when I bring the final carryover number after the audit is pretty much complete.
So our approval of community assistance using those carryover funds from travel, at least from the administration standpoint, is not something that it's comfortable with.
I'm just not comfortable with looking at little bits and pieces. There is in this month's budget mod a carryover under motor fuels tax that was under the specific cemetery preservation. If Doug and I discussed that, and so we're pretty certain that nothing else would be spent out of that, so it's being brought forward. I just don't want to get into looking at every line item, all these different underspending, and bringing it forward a little bit at a time, because for two reasons. One, the audit, we've not even closed the books. The audit won't be complete until March, and it would be more prone to errors that way.
Thank you, Ms. Kitcher, and I guess, Madam Speaker, since we unilaterally approved these funds, that we'll take the administration's sentiments into account, but I don't see anything that prevents us from approving them before March.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, another item is we have the $7,500 cap. Some of us have exceeded that cap, and our at-large council people, their situation is different, and they have exceeded the $7,500 cap. And Jack, did you want to make a comment?
Well, it was my understanding that that was excluded from the 7,500 because those were not considered elective trips where we visited our communities.
I'm sorry, Jack. I thought you were finished.
No, it was just that it was my understanding that those were not to be included in the 7,500.
Okay,
those are excluded.
So the inference is that you have no cap, correct?
Well, the 7,500, my understanding, is for elective trips and not for business trips.
Okay.
Or official Cherokee business trips.
But I have a list of a whole bunch of picnics, and are those elective or are those considered official travel?
Those are official.
Those are official travel.
Community meetings.
Any questions or comments? I just brought that forward for disclosure because a lot of people have asked me. Ms. Fishing Hawk?
Well, I got a
3
question.
minutes.
Okay, because I attended one up in Kansas, and we found out that I had several constituents up there. So this begs the question, all of us has constituents everywhere, so I take it that the picnics that you go and meet your constituents, none of them is considered elective? Am I understanding this right?
In the travel policy, it said that at large, I think, I don't remember the exact wording.
Page 2,
At large or
Section
excluded.
5.
Yeah,
Page
go
2,
ahead,
Section
Joe.
5.
Okay, but that's what I'm asking. If I go up to Kansas to a picnic to see my constituents, because they are some residing. Matter of fact, I found some Macklemores, I found some Vans, and I found another group of them, not to mention some Fish and Hawks and Hammers. 5 different families that I knew of that are voting in Adair County. Is that not visiting my constituents? See, there's a whole lot of room here for making unlimited travel with no cap.
It may be visiting your constituents. However, it is not defined in the policy as official travel. Official travel, by definition, is limited only to certain things. Committee and full council meeting, Cherokee National Holiday, joint council, inauguration, presidential inauguration, and at-large community meetings for at-large council members. So it's limiting at-large meetings only in definition of official travel to the at-large councilors. So no, it wouldn't be considered according to your policy as official travel.
Okay.
And the cap, because of what I just said in the definition, there would be no cap for at-large.
That's my interpretation.
Because they've been excluded from it.
Ms. Gloria Jordan?
Well, and it's no disrespect to our at-large counselors, but if we're trying to get a handle on travel for budgetary purposes in the economy that we're in now, doesn't everyone need to have sort of a cap on their travel so that our budget doesn't exceed in total what's put there for travel? I mean, I pose that question to all of you. Seems like, and maybe this is the year that I've just noticed it, but there is an at-large picnic everywhere in the world between now and June. And I just don't understand how, when we were all told during the budgetary process, no money, no money, no money, no changes, no changes, no changes, no services, big decreases in all the service area, but we're going to continue to travel to picnic after picnic after picnic. You all need to be reminded, I think, that we get a mere $1,500 a person to put on our district meetings, which are the equivalent to these at-large picnics. Yet they're enjoying $189,000, I believe, budget. I may be wrong, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I remember that line item was somewhere around $189,000, plus apparently unlimited travel. And I mean this with no disrespect to you all, but I think there needs to be some control mechanisms here on how much is spent, and I think it needs to be somewhat similar to what we're doing in the 14 counties. And I'm just curious why nobody else is interested in asking those questions. Or maybe you're interested, but I kind of caught you off guard. But folks, there's a lot of difference between $1,500 for the whole year in your district and $180-some thousand and then getting to travel to all of these places. And I know in our district meetings, we get something like 1,000 people. I think in their meetings, they're getting something like 50 people. So I mean, I'm just, and I don't mean that it's not addressed towards the respected council people at large, but I think we need to think about it. And I also think that we need to think about having these meetings all the way up to the next election, when we've been told at the end of December, no more district meetings that are being paid for through some Cherokee Nation funds. So I wonder, when are these meetings going to come to a halt, or are they going to come to a halt? Or are they going to be funded in some other method other than using some Cherokee Nation money? I'm just saying what's fair for one needs to be fair for us. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Coates?
Yeah, I would like to address the many, many misconceptions and misassertions that have just been made here. That there are slews of picnics between now and next June. For instance, there is one this coming weekend in the greater Los Angeles area and in San Diego. That's one trip. And in April, there will be another one in Northern California. Outside of that, there are no picnics. There are not slews of picnics between now and the election time. These picnics are community meetings. There are 4 or 5 of our community organizations. We have 21 at-large community organizations at this time. This weekend, we will meet with 4 of them over 2 days of picnics. It is the only time all year that we will see those people. Same thing in April. We will meet with 4 of them over one weekend. It is the only time all year that we will see those constituents at Cherokee Nation expense. And that's the way it goes. We will make one visit per year to each of 21 organizations, and most of those are stacked up so that we meet with at least 3 of them on one weekend of travel. That's the only time all year. You talk about a $1,500 budget for your community meetings. I have to travel 1,500 miles to even meet with my constituents. I can't travel half an hour, and I'm not in a community where people can see me on a regular basis, where I can interact with them on a daily basis. I wish I had that ability in the way that the in-district counselors do. So this one time each year for myself, for Mr. Baker, that is it. That is when we will actually see people. It's my understanding that that's why we were exempted from the prohibition of holding these kinds of meetings during the last 6 months before elections. It's because for us, it actually works against us as incumbents, candidates that may be coming up, if we are not able to meet at these kinds of meetings, if the Cherokee Nation doesn't participate in these kinds of meetings. The picnics are being phased out of Cherokee Nation participation. For the ones in Southern California, this is the last year that we will sponsor them, because the intent has always been that they would take them over. But I will still go to those events within the last 6 months, because that's the only time I see them. It's the only time I'm going to be able to see them all year long. The remarks about the $189,000, that is CAUTA's budget. That is separate from what we are talking about here today, of the travel of council people. That is to send cultural specialists and other people out to do training and technical assistance kinds of work. That's the kind of things that CAUTA does with regional organizations here.
Julia, excuse me, time's up. Thank you. Mr. Baker?
Yes, I just want to point out that for official travel, there's no limit for any council person, except for the amount that we have in our budget, but there's no limit for any person on official travel. The only limit of $7,500 is for elected travel, and there is that distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Calm-Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think rather than maybe approach it this way, if it truly is a valid budget concern, which any budget issue is valid, then I think we should look to our colleagues to present a solution, given what we've obligated them to do under the Constitution and serve their constituents. It would be better than having this necessarily in this way in this forum without bringing it prior, is ask them to present possible solutions to address the budget issues, because I don't know that I'm comfortable with how we've done this discussion or dialogue. It kind of concerns me. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Ms. Fishinghawk?
What I was commenting on was what I got from CAUTA on this calendar for the year coming. In October, I see a Portland, Oregon, a Eugene, Oregon, Tampa, Denver History Course, Oklahoma City, Seattle, Washington, Dallas, Denver History Course, Fresno, California kickoff, and 2 Southern California picnics for October. November, I have a Denver, Colorado history course, in Albuquerque, New Mexico with parentheses chief, a Tampa, Florida with parentheses chief, Houston, Texas with parentheses chief, and Denver, Colorado history course. That's November. December, there's nothing. Wichita, Kansas, Kansas City's in January. Phoenix, HC, Portland, Oregon, Eugene, Denver, Colorado, Phoenix, and Seattle's in January. February's Phoenix, Tucson, Phoenix, Orange County, San Diego, Riverside History Course, San Antonio, Austin, Riverside, Phoenix, Albuquerque, and Houston. That was February. And I realize we only have one time to talk for 3 minutes. So yes, this is causing me, some concern. And it really, I'll tell you what, which one of y'all is the 4-year term?
I am.
You are? Okay. But am I right in saying, when we passed the law, that none of us can have any community meetings on Cherokee Nation's dime after, I'm wanting to say, Todd, December 24th is the 6 months out?
Yes.
And I think if I get that clear, that'd probably clear up a lot of my questions. So, Todd, I take it that none of us are supposed to have any meetings after December 24th on Cherokee Nation's dime?
Yes, I've been asked by a couple of counselors of when would be the last time I could have a community meeting, on that budgetary item, and my calculations is Christmas Eve. And that's what I've told a number of counselors.
Anything further you have? A little time left.
Madam Speaker?
Yeah, you have a minute left on her issue.
Okay, I can quickly, hopefully address some of the questions that have been posed about the calendar. I'm the chair of the at-large corporation now by sitting in the seat of education. And we put together this agenda. It is, if you look at the key on the front page, a series of different kinds of workshops that we have with at-large groups. They may be cultural, they may be language. I do one on citizenship and identity. They may be genealogy. So we send various staff from the nation to present these workshops during a time that they're already having a community meeting in that community. We don't pay for their room or their expenses for that community meeting. We just come and present the program. So it is the expenses of the staff that provide that program during that period of time, and we cycle those through the year. Each community group gets 2 such programs a year, and we cycle those through. So just to explain, we are not setting up community meetings for these communities, but we are providing them some programming based on the at-large program that was budgeted and developed. So thank you.
You did good. Mr. Thornton and then Mr. Baker.
There's only one thing I'd like to say about this community meetings. And maybe I missed it somewhere, but I had no idea that there was having meetings over in San Diego or Paris. I know where both of those places are, and I have constituents out there. And I learned of this yesterday, and I would have went. I surely would have went. And I don't appreciate not being let in on what's going on. And now I hear that there's going to be one in April, and I knew nothing about that. So, if I'd have known 10 days ago, I'd have been going to California. And if it took my funding for travel, that'd be fine with me. But I've got constituents out there that vote in this election just like anybody else. And I would like to be let in on these dates that's prepared for these picnics. And, I think this council should have some kind of judgment on these picnics except for just 2 people. And because they are our constituents. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'd be happy to rescind that entire calendar back out to this council. Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
My only comment on the calendar, those are the community meetings that are set up by the community organizations. That is, Judy and I will not be attending. The majority of those, almost none of those.
Okay, can I ask you for a point of clarification or just a point, since I got a minute left? So after December the 24th, I take it that there's going to be no more attending these meetings on our dime, since it's starting the election year for one of you all. And because that's the rules.
May I respond, or
she's directed to Mr. Baker.
It's my understanding that that's for the ones who's up for election next year.
Okay, so like you'd be attending the Julia camp.
May I?
Right.
Okay, that's what I think.
And we have deferred to Judith.
I don't know, it's up to Madam Speaker. I think she said one time each in 3 minutes, so I'm not sure. To her.
You only have a couple minutes. Ms. Coates, did you want to respond?
I'll respond
to her?
real quickly. It was discussed in committee meetings. We've got it on record. We have it on tape. That at-large counselors were exempted from that because, as I said just a few moments ago, this is the only time all year when I will be with those people in Southern California or at those community meetings. If I am not there, then it actually, the intent is to not give an advantage to the incumbent, but as the incumbent, I'm actually disadvantaged when I'm not able to be there one time a year, and I don't see them at any other time as the people in the districts, within districts, frequently do.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Ms. Watts?
I am totally confused now. I thought I was pretty clear after I read the law and refreshed my memory on the meeting minutes. But from what I recall, no one during that period could go, and I hate this is going to disappoint folks, but what I recall is no one during that dark out period could go on tribal money. That didn't mean you couldn't pay for your own trip. But there was literally a dark out period during that whole thing for all, even if you were not up for elections. So I don't know. I guess we need to really go back and clarify all of it. I don't know whose legal opinion we need to get, but I remember it differently after listening to that dialogue. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Ms. Gloria Jordan?
I would make a motion that we carry this over for further discussion on next month's agenda.
Okay.
And have Todd do some research for us on.
So you want to table?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Me. Second.
All in favor of tabling to next month, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, everyone, for participating. I've had so many questions, and so has Gail, so this clears up somewhat what we need to do. Okay, under new business, there's a resolution nominating Timothy Brown to the Elected Officials Compensation Committee, and Mr. Brown is here. I became acquainted with him through Jennifer Berger Johnson, who was a former Compensation Committee member from Sequoia, and he's from Sequoia County. And he's very well, as you'll see from his resume, he's very well qualified. He not only has a business administration degree, but a JD, and has a finance background, and very experienced in Native American law. So
I'll make a motion to accept his nomination.
Second.
moved in second. Any discussion? Before we vote, Mr. Brown, would you come forward? And you got 3 minutes to tell how good you are.
Well, I just want to tell this body how much I appreciate this opportunity to serve the Cherokee Nation. As I'm sure everybody's at least glanced at my resume, so I'll just give you a little bit of expansion on that. I grew up in Sallisaw, in the Sallisaw area. I graduated from Sallisaw High School. Tried to move away, moved to Norman, went to school up there, moved to Dallas. Didn't like it. Didn't like Texas. Got back, went back to law school, and ended up focusing on Native American law in law school. It was one of those things that I really have slowly moved back. It was, growing up in a small town, as a kid, you're just thinking, I just got to get out of here. I just got to get out of here. And I've gone to all the way, just gradually getting bigger. Now I'm gradually getting smaller. Currently, I'm in Holdenville, which I don't know if anybody's been in that part of the country. I really hadn't before, but the Brown side of my family there's a large contingent of them there, and that's kind of how I ended up there. But really, I grew up in Sequoia County, and that's kind of where I think that I'll end up. So, again, I appreciate the opportunity to serve, and I'm open to any questions if anybody has anything.
Unless you haven't personally met them, Mr. Thornton and Ms. Fulbright are your very good representatives.
No.
Don't that one. Any questions for Mr. Brown? All in favor of his nomination signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for being willing to serve.
Thank you.
The second nomination is Michael Kelly. How I became acquainted with Mr. Kelly, he serves on the Cherokee Heritage Center Board. He also is very well qualified. He's an investment advisor. In fact, that's why he's unable to be here today. He's doing a 401k seminar, which he had already committed to earlier. So he is available by phone if you need to ask him any questions. But
Move for approval.
Second. Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 3 is a resolution authorizing a donation of environmental equipment to the Monitoring Support Center in Las Vegas. Ms. Cowan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is actually going to a group at UNLV that trains other tribes, and that's why it's important, so I move for its approval.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 4 is an amendment to the tax code adding a provision to register Delaware tribal government vehicles. Dr. Cobb.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The purpose of this act is to amend Legislative Act 0101, Cherokee Nation Motor Vehicle Licensing and Tax Code, to amend the definition to provide for registration of vehicles that are owned by the Delaware Tribe of Indians and used for conducting official government business. When this issue came up, I've been in contact with the Ragsdales, and I have had our council attorney peruse through this extensively to make sure that everything is in order, and I would move for its approval.
Second. Moved in second. Discussion. Mr. Soap.
Yeah, what's the number of tags that we would be issuing?
It's our understanding there'll be a small number, and they will only be used for government purposes. In other words, the same kind of thing, because they don't have the authority to issue their own license, and we would have to license with the state of Oklahoma.
Maybe less than 20 or 1?
Oh, I don't know.
Madam Chair.
Well, why didn't you just get up there in the first place?
You beat me.
You should have eaten so much lunch.
Actually, I haven't had lunch. Councilor Soap, the government only has, they just purchased a pickup truck. They have one vehicle, so that, right now, that's all they're talking about.
Thank you.
20 would be an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Well, you never know, they might be going to issue a fleet vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. Was Section 4F, is that part of what's being amended here?
I helped
We
write.
got 5.
Yeah.
Just 5 or 4?
Yeah,
Go ahead. I mean, 4F makes reference to Delaware Tribe.
Right.
The only question I had is, I'm reading this, I support this, by the way, but I read this and it says, which is owned by a tribal citizen or owned by a federally recognized Delaware Tribe of Indians and used conducting official government business, which is located within the historical boundaries of Cherokee Nation. Does that change anything about where the citizen lives? I mean, this is talking about a vehicle which is located in the Cherokee Nation as opposed to a tribal. Because right now, tribal citizens outside the 14 counties can't purchase tags.
Right. This I know that's a little bit confusing, a little bit awkward.
I know that wasn't the intent, but as I read it, I'm thinking.
The second part of the phrase, or, and that's the reason we changed it to location, to try to clarify that. We maybe could have written it better, but the legislative intent at the Tribal Council in Axis is it will be only for the government to license with a government license similar to what we do here at the Cherokee Nation. In other words, a Delaware citizen could not be licensed through this authority if they weren't a member of the Cherokee Nation.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Thornton, sorry.
I don't really have a question. I do want to support this, and the main reason I support it is because back in the 1820s, Cherokee Nation, well, not the Cherokee Nation, but the Cherokee people that lived in Illinois River District got in a little battle with the Osage, and the Delawares come in on the Cherokee side, and that's the reason we won that battle. So I'm going to keep it back to Delaware Days.
Thank you for that bit of historical information.
Hey, this is an act, so
It's a-
roll call by acclamation.
It's got back to
Yes, ma'am.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 5 is an act amending the election law, adding provisions for overlapping terms. Ms. Coates?
Yes, Madam Speaker, it's just as a point of information, when does my 3 minutes begin and end? Would I be allowed
Discussion.
to have discussion time? You have in the book, the act that is being proposed, but we have just passed around also an amendment. The only amendment from what's in the book is at number B4, B3 and B4 on the third page. And essentially, and this is just for informational purposes, what this does is to allow a candidate in an overlapping term who was running for a different term to stay in the office that they are presently holding up until the day before inauguration. It would require, however, that that candidate submit a letter of resignation for that date, an irrevocable letter of resignation, 30 days prior to their filing, within that 30-day period before the filing. This is done just to address what I perceived as the author of this as an inequity that would allow some candidates to remain in their position and would require others to forfeit it. I did not see that as fair, and so tried to address that. But with just as an informational point, that is the only difference here, I would move for its approval.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. Mr. Jack Baker?
Yes. When this was, or similar act was proposed last month, I thought about it long and hard because it's actually an act that I was considering bringing forward after the next election. And I was thinking, well, if I'm for it for the future, then I should be for it for now. But since one of our council members has already declared his candidacy for principal chief, I would ask for a friendly amendment that he be exempted from this act.
I strongly feel that there are some principles behind this, and I don't think that we should exempt our principles at any moment. I really want to invite and implore this council to consider this legislation on the merits, not on the individuals of the moment. This is an act for the future, in my estimation, and if it's good for the future, it's good for right now, and so I would not accept that amendment.
Mr. Baker?
Okay. Then I make a motion that we add to this act an exemption for Councilor Baker.
Make a motion to add an exemption for Mr. Baker.
Yes.
What about other people?
No, because he's the only one who's declared.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
It was Chris.
Do I have a second?
Second.
You say second?
I'll second, just to hear the discussion.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Crittenden?
I kind of like that, since when we pass an act or a law, it's usually not retroactive. So the fact that he's already filed or announced, it's sort of like backing up. So I think I like this.
Okay. Any other on, Mr. Hoskins, sorry. I saw that little finger up there.
Yeah, I certainly support this because it carves away the most offensive part of this whole initiative that the administration has pursued, which is to target Councilman Baker. I realize there's new sponsors this month, and in fact, I had a conversation with Councilman Soap, and I know he has some genuine concerns about the legalities of this first time when we have a midterm counselors running, so I certainly respect the counselors for their curiosity about the issue. I just think this vehicle from the get-go was designed to target Mr. Baker. Exempting him is fine. To me, that raises some other questions about, do we really want to proceed down this path of carving out for a council member? I'm going to, because again, it takes out the most offensive part of this whole initiative. I don't know of any other counselor in this body that's a midterm counselor who's going to run, but and I don't know of anyone who's even thinking about it. But if they were, the ship will have sailed at this committee meeting. But I support this because again, it maybe puts lipstick on a pig, so to speak. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
See, on the amendment, Ms. Laura Jordan.
Jack, I would ask you to consider that wording, this would be a friendly amendment, I guess, to your motion, that wording be any announced candidate. Because we've seen the announcements in the paper, so we know up to today who has announced. And so I would ask that wording be announced candidate.
As long as it's clear that there's only the one that's announced. I would agree to if this is the one announced candidate.
I'll be fine with that.
Okay, repeat that, please.
I offered a friendly amendment to his motion that the wording be, and I think we've worked it out, the one announced candidate would be the exception. I don't see there needs to be a name, but the one announced candidate. Because one formal announcement is all I have seen of candidates not already in those positions.
You accept that, Mr. Baker?
I did, yes.
And who's the second?
I'm the second. And I second it.
I'll accept
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, you did. You did. You beat me to
You accept that?
Yes.
Mr. Embry, do you have a comment?
I have the motion, actually.
Unfortunately, yes.
I
Madam Chairman, when a act is passed that is proposed or passes that is to the detriment or to the benefit of an individual, it's called a bill of attainder. Most of those acts have been held to be unconstitutional. Now, even prior, and if you recall my September 27th memorandum to the council about questions that arise out of the constitutionality of the bill in its original form, if the language that is supplemented in here by the amendment it would probably be defined as a bill of attainder to benefit one individual. Now, in the general sense, let me remind the committee of the memorandum that I've done. Now, the resign to run rule is very rare in American politics. The United States Constitution does not have a resign to run rule. Of the 50 states, I was only able to find 5 states that did have a resign to run rule, and they were Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, and Texas.
Point of order, this is not addressing the motion.
It's addressing the amendment.
The amendment goes, it is.
Which you already did.
Yeah.
Well, I'll reserve the rest of my comments, but the rest of the amendment itself would be constitutional questions on a bill of attainder. So, and I'll reserve any other questions about the constitutionality of it.
Okay. We're still on the amendment. Right. Ms. Laura Jordan?
Well, based on what our legal counsel has just said, and with respect to Jack, I'm going to withdraw my amendment because it sounds like we shouldn't even be doing this, that it's going to be subject to a constitutional challenge. So I assume what we probably ought to do is vote up or down on this law you've got in front of us.
The amendment. We're
Well,
discussing
point of
the
order, we've
amendment.
already accepted the...
It's part of it.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess I'm just saying that based on your recommendation, I don't feel like I can vote for this.
Okay. It has been accepted, so we haven't taken a vote on it yet. Ms. Coates.
Well, it's interesting, Mr. Hembree's enlightenment of us, and it is enlightening. I do appreciate the additional information. And I don't know, in view of that, where my point stands on a legal basis, but it does seem to me that there's something just very wrong. I mean, we've just heard Councilor Hoskins make again the assertion that the administration has targeted Councilor Baker specifically. I don't know where this bill originally came from. I can honestly say that. I don't know who the author of it was, but when Councilor Cobb brought it last month, I didn't know how I was going to vote on it, and so I've been considering the merits of it for a long time. And what it seems to me, in view of Councilor Baker's motion, is that this is, if there's are assertions that this was targeting a counselor, then certainly this is an overt privileging of one particular counselor to exempt someone from something that we are going to consider here. So I guess that's the extent of my comment. I'm concerned about that, setting the precedent for having privileged one individual with something that we might place on everybody else in the future.
Mr. Garvin?
Thank you.
Yes. I think to really be fair on this, the other 8 counselors that have a 6-year term should have the same privilege. I don't plan on running for chief, but I might. Who knows? I'm not a lady. They have privilege to change their mind. They all
Okay, Don.
I'd like to offer that as a friendly amendment. All of the 6-year term people have that privilege.
Mr. Hoskins?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Excuse me. I haven't answered his request for a friendly amendment.
I didn't understand it as a friendly amendment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he did move as a friendly amendment. And that needs to be.
What was your request for?
That all of the council people that have 6-year terms have this privilege to run for chief without resigning.
Okay, and I will accept that.
Ms. Count Watts?
I will pass for the moment.
No, you accept it.
You accept. Okay, I missed what on that last dialogue. What is it again that we're?
The friendly
I accepted
amendment,
one already.
Right, but the friendly amendment that was requested was that we change it to all 6-year terms will have the same privilege.
Well, I feel violated against. Why can't it? Sense of fairness, I want to run for my seat and chief and deputy chief. Then come on now.
Well, that would allow that.
So it does. It allows all of us to run, and we can run for both.
Well, not so long. No.
6 years.
Those who
6-year people.
Mr. Garvin?
It should be all the council.
Just a moment. Mr. Garvin has the floor.
It should be all the council has this privilege.
Not just 4 or 6 year, but all council.
All council.
Okay, I'll accept.
Okay, and I would accept that.
Mr. Sobel?
Yeah, I would take some time to just kind of refrain from talking about 6-year terms, because we're really not talking about 6-year terms in this discussion. We're talking about future overlapping terms in 50 years is what we're talking about. So let's talk about that if we could for a couple of minutes anyway. But the one thing that I wanted to point out was there was some discussion, I think, from Todd. He mentioned that there is some constitutionality discussions and questions about whether or not you can make an exemption for a particular counselor. And I think it clearly states, if you look in our Constitution, that this council, this body can do that. Article 9, I believe it is, maybe we need to break out the Constitution. I believe we do for this discussion. Section 2 says that, if there's a guy out there that wants to serve on another tribal entity or whatever it is, this body right here has the ability to make an exception for that individual. They can pass that, and that's exactly what we talk about doing right now. Now, for that specific question, I believe we have the right to do that as a council, and no questions asked. If somebody wants to make an exemption for a particular council member, we can do that. It's within our responsibilities, actually. And so, if that's what the council wants to do, that's fine. We need to take a vote on it. We need to accept it. That's the provisions that we have. That's our responsibility. Now, as far as how that relates to the rest of the act, again, we need to be thinking about not the 6-year term people, because this is a one-time event. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about in 20 years. We're talking about 50 years. What is the impact of these overlapping terms on our government? And that's what we need to solve today. And I would like to get the opportunity in future discussion about this to talk about what are some scenarios that we would encounter that this body needs to address today or this month and take care of it, because there are some scenarios out there that are quite kind of concerning to me, and hopefully we'll get to discuss it. Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask Mr. Baker if he would agree that and I'd ask Mr. Hembree's input too, if a cleaner way to do this is rather than explicitly exempt a class of counselors, let's strike the emergency clause in Section 8, and let's make the effective date of this after the 2011 election. That removes the impact of this act from any counselor, and it puts the effective date down the road, and really accomplishes, I think, the same end that Councilor Garvin wants to achieve, but it does so without explicitly carving out a special exemption for counselors based on their classification on the council. So I'd ask Councilor Jack Baker to entertain that friendly amendment.
Mr. Baker?
No. On my second.
Okay.
No.
And the second is not, so.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the amendment? Mr. Soap, we really just talked one time, but you had some time left over.
Okay.
All right, so you got 30 seconds.
I think the reason why that we shouldn't do that to support the counselors that didn't accept that is because if we do that, we set precedent. I think in this case, we don't need to set precedent other than the fact that if a counselor has already committed and said that he's going to run, then if he wants to be special, then we make it special. If not, then it's really no big deal. It's really. But we don't need to set precedent for 6 people to actually get special favors or special treatment. If it's going to be one person, it needs to be one person. Thank you.
On information, Madam Speaker, does the 3 minutes apply to each aspect of this debate? So now we're talking about a motion. We'll get into the substance. I assume those are two separate. Okay.
Mr. Buzzer?
I guess I need a point of clarification from our counsel. What if we didn't change the law at all and just left the way it was? What would be the outcome of it then?
Mr. Hopkins? Mr. Hembrew?
I would defer to this. If under the present law, under the present election law, there is no prohibition of persons seeking other elective offices. I mean, you can, to put it bluntly, there's no resign to run rule. You wouldn't have to resign. Any individual that meets the constitutional requirements for elective office can run for office, be they elected, appointed, or a regular citizen of the Cherokee Nation.
Point of information.
Am I still at the floor?
Yes, she needs a point of information.
So under Legislative Act of the Election Law, which is 707, I believe, Section 31B of B, the candidate may not file to run for an office if he or she has already filed to run for another office in the same election unless the prior filing is withdrawn. And I believe that shows intent that there is precedent under the law that you shouldn't be in 2 seats at once, essentially.
No, that is that you can't run for 2 seats at once. You can't run for principal, chief, and council at the same time. That's the purpose of that provision.
And just to follow up on it, my thinking was if you let the law just like it is, it would certainly take care of our council people or anybody that's going to run in midterm elections. Because in 2 or 4 years, they're going to have another election. If you have a sitting council member, then he's going to have to give up the seat for 2 more years. And then I don't see it being a problem with just leaving the law like it is. I don't.
Mr. Crittenden?
And I echo what Harley says. I mean, the current law mirrors federal law in 45 states. I mean, I think...
We're not debating the act.
Mr. Crittenden has the floor.
And someone has mentioned the merits in this new... Personally, I don't see any merits in it myself. I think we'll leave it just like it is. That's my comments. I still have some 3 minutes
Mr.
left.
Have any time left?
I'll do that later.
Chris, you had your hand up, but you don't have any time left.
Okay.
Should have said it all at once. Ms. Combs?
Just a point of order to the last two comments that have been made. We are not yet debating the act. We are still on the motion, and I think that when we get to the act, we can flesh out some of those things.
Any other?
Just a point of clarification. What we're going to vote on is Mr. Garvin's amendment to Mr. Baker's motion, which is exempt everyone presently that's in a 6-year term.
Yes.
Is that okay?
All tribal councils.
Except one of them. Exempt everybody. Okay, exempt everybody. I stand corrected. I understand what we're voting on now.
Okay. All minds clear. Mr. Hembry? Did you have a comment?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we're voting. Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I think I'm confused.
Yeah, we're voting on the amendment. Ms. Calm-Watts, before we vote.
And I appreciate that because you called and asked if all minds were clear, and unfortunately mine is not. So I understood the intent that this would allow any of us to run for a second seat at that time during the 2011 election, whether we had an overlapping term or not. So it would effectively, for the 2011 election, suspend that election law, saying we couldn't file for both at the same time. Because personally, if there's some people that get to keep their seat, if people get to keep their seat and file for another office, then I want to run for 2 seats.
Mr. Austin, have any time left on this amendment?
I think I have 30 seconds, Madam.
30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, if this passes, the most it does is conflict with the other provision that says you can't file for 2 offices. Let's say a 4-termer under this amendment, if it passes, says I'm going to run for chief and my seat that I'm up both for in 2011. The other act would prohibit filing for both.
Right.
And in any case, the idea that, well, some of us get to run for 2 seats, that's actually not true. A mid-termer doesn't get to run for 2 seats in this next election. He or she runs for 1 seat. That's a higher office from this body. Just clarification, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Under no provision, either if the amendment passes, can an individual run for 2 seats, 2 different offices during the same election cycle. A sitting council person could not run for their council person and run simultaneously for deputy chief or principal chief. And that's, I believe, never been the intent of any of the proposed legislation. The effect of the amendment, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it would exempt the council members that if they meet the qualifications that they could run, i.e. they still couldn't run for 2 seats, but they could go ahead and run in this election cycle for a higher office if they were a midterm councilor.
Mr. Baker, have any time left? Mr. Baker, you have 15 seconds.
Okay. Well, on this issue, what could happen is that, example, Councilor Thornton has a term that doesn't expire until 2013. And Councilor Fulbright's term expires in 2011. Councilor Fulbright could actually run against her in the seat and still retain his own seat. So that could happen. So that's why all council members could be exempt for this purpose.
Time. Mr. Baker, did you have a comment?
This just keeps getting more ridiculous, folks. Has anybody listened to your constituents? The Cherokee people think this is crazy, that it's ridiculous, that it's mean-spirited, that the chief is scared. Now, folks, this is ridiculous. We need to just vote this down and go on about this.
Point of order. The point of the call, point of order.
I did. And if the chief is not present, He should not be named if he cannot engage in debate with someone, especially, let alone their personal.
All minds just settle down. Just refrain from saying any names. We used Mr. Baker's name earlier, so let's don't use the chief or anyone else's name. All right? Mr. Baker, you still have the floor.
But, excuse me, point of order, his comments do not relate to this amendment, it relates to the overall act.
It does relate to the overall act. And I will be not voting for this amendment or any other amendment or for this act.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Thornton.
Call for the question.
Question has been called. What's the question? All in, you want to read the amendment?
What I think the amendment is that it would exclude all current council members from the overlapping term act or the resign to run.
Yes. Clear? Everybody clear? We're voting on the amendment only. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call. Yes, is you're in favor of the amendment.
Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Hannah Glory Jordan,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
David Thornton,
No.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Buell England,
No.
Bill John Baker,
No.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Julia Coates,
No.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
No.
Janelle Fulbright.
Yes.
We have 9 yes and 8 no.
9 yes, 8 no, the motion carries. Okay, now back to the main motion. Mr. Soap.
This is my
Wait,
scenario.
yeah, you're next, and then Ms. Coates, and then Mr. Hoskin. Those were the names that were left to debate on the main issue.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Soap.
This is a scenario I think we need to look at. Todd will need to help us out here. But let's consider that in the future, you got counselors from District 4 and District 5 that are overlapping terms, and they decide to run for chief and deputy chief. And let's say they're elected to office. What exactly happens at that point in time? I mean, the Constitution is very specific about the order in which all these things start to domino, and this is what happens, and this is what happens, and this is very specific. And so in that scenario, what exactly happens, Todd, under our Constitution when a counselor from District 4 and District 5 in the future with overlapping terms runs and they are elected, what happens to our government at that point in time?
They have overlapping terms, so there are sitting councilors.
Yes.
And they're both running for chief and deputy chief.
Yes.
Okay.
And they win.
And they win, okay. There is a prohibition of, you cannot simultaneously hold 2 offices, okay?
Right.
All right? So in order to be sworn in to their higher office, let's say chief and deputy chief, they would have to first resign their position as council.
Why would you have to resign your term?
Why
would you have to resign? You just said you maybe have both terms. Why would you have to resign?
Because you can't hold 2 offices at the same time.
Okay, so you have to resign. Right?
Just like if I was the senator from the United States senator from Texas and I was elected president, I would have to resign. If I won, I would have to resign my senator.
Have to resign. So in that scenario,
Let him finish.
No, I'll defer to the question.
Thank you.
Okay.
So when you have to resign, then what happens? Either the council, at that point, the council selects who the replacements are. For those 2 seats, the council selects those replacements.
Yeah.
If you don't resign, then that's kind of falls into this other category where maybe just that principal chief that just got elected gets to select who fills those 2 positions for that scenario.
A vacant position would be filled in accordance with the Constitution and the laws, and it depends on the amount of time
But
left.
then you have the situation where the second vote getter gets the opportunity to come in and say, hey, what about me? Constitution says that I'm supposed to get that seat. It is, so in that case, that's the only time the people really get to decide who that person is that fills that seat, because it's all based on timing. If the guy resigns at the date of his taking of the office, then all of a sudden, whose responsibility is it to fill? Is it the chief that fills the vacant council positions? Is it the council? It's definitely not the people at that point in time, because their term is maybe halfway over, depending on when the clock strikes.
You just have to, all I can
So
say
in
is
that case, you're taking the people's voice out of electing their officials when you do that. Unless you give them the opportunity to hold a special election, or you determine that, hey, that second person is available to take this position, and they accept. And in that case, you say, okay, we relinquish that to you. It's your responsibility.
And Councilor Soap, the only way to answer that question is that any vacant position would have to be filled in accordance with the Constitution and the laws.
Thank you.
Before we go on, the nurses are here to give a flu shot, and we can leave one at a time if you want to do it that way. But they do need to leave shortly. So if anybody needs to go get a flu shot, you want to take a 5-minute recess or 10-minute, or do you want to go one person at a time? What's your pleasure?
Madam Speaker, I'll move to make a 10-minute recess.
Also, 10-minute?
Yeah, because there's no way we can rush through a needle, I think.
Have a second?
Throw that out.
10 minutes.
I'll need to just say it.